probably people in this room that are smarter than me, so any glaring errors I make, if you do me the service of not pointing it out directly, to catch me later and say, hey, it's dropped the ball on that one. I have a basic presentation that is a PDF. If you signed up or you're a part of the industry group, you don't need to write this down. I'm going to give them the PDF, so every screen, every bit of information I'm providing today will be available to you, and they can just email it to you. So what we have is a pretty much kind of a standard drink from the fire hose industry overview. We talk a little bit about everything. So one of the things we wanted to do today was to talk about our experience in applications and what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years in the changing of the guard, if you will, in application submittals. So we for the first time as a company, got blanked in Pennsylvania. We've always won licenses for our clients, both in cultivation and dispensary and extraction. But we really kind of scratched our head in Pennsylvania and said, what do we not do for our clients? Now, we don't write their applications. We don't fill out the paperwork. We give them the bolt-ups, the various elements of the application, SOPs, various information the state's requiring. But it's up to the client to provide information on their diversity plan, their own business history, all those elements that we see in Pennsylvania. But the one thing we really noticed in Pennsylvania that was an interesting lesson is we saw large, well-funded groups come to the table. So in the past, where we've come into states and done well, you know, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 wasn't an unusual amount to spend to create a fairly robust application. We saw groups like GTI, Cresco, and several others in Pennsylvania who had between $3 and $6 million into their application process. By the time they locked down real estate, applied to multiple districts for both grower, processor, and dispensary, we saw groups come together with substantial legal teams, lobbyist groups that we've not really seen to this date. So the one lesson we really saw in Pennsylvania is that a marketplace that shouldn't be that big, remember Pennsylvania is oils only. No smokable, no sweets, no savories, no medibles, no edibles, 6 forms of delivery. A very much New York style delivery, complete with pharmacists and other things. So the one thing we learned as we looked at our experience there, we had groups that scored within 5 points of second place or within 10 points. But where they fell down a lot of times was their local plan for diversity, their interaction with their community development plan. So we saw elements in the scoring that should have been between 75 and 100 points, people scoring 30, 35, whereas Cresco's scoring 50, 55, GTI, all these other really well put together applications that when they're redacted, they're over 1,000 pages and they redact the whole application. So you can't even see what was on their application. So the lesson we learned, and I don't expect you guys to probably have that same experience here, but I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see the level of gamesmanship and the application process here raise itself a notch or two. I don't know who's going to show up. I know you all have an Arkansas required element for ownership, but as we all know, those ownership elements can be subverted. They can be pushed back into, even though they're 60%, pref returns on investment and various other things can make you a 2% owner, even though on paper you look like you're 60%. I advise you don't have the wife who's never had a job, who's been a great mom and a great raiser of your children. Don't throw in the application and say, we now are minority owned, when the money is clearly family money or other people's money. So be straightforward on your application, make sure you're doing everything you can to be honest in your representations. But once again, we saw a level of competition in Pennsylvania we hadn't seen before. We won licenses in Nevada. California had rules in the books back in '96. They're just now getting them with the ALM initiative promulgated. So we've been very successful in other states getting people applications, but we don't generally take an ownership interest. We're just helping people to show that they have the experience. You can't rely on your ex-brother-in-law in California who used to go to his basement to be your cultivation master or guru. It's probably not going to look good on his resume. I'm sure that little bust he had maybe 12 years ago on his record may also create a problem for you. We actually won in Hawaii, but later on our client was disqualified because a group of 61 investors, one of those investors had a criminal background hiccup that he didn't disclose, and it caused the whole application to be set aside by the DOH. They're currently trying to get that set aside, but they're not having much luck right now. Hawaii is still not, they're still not up and running. So it's been an interesting experience. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of run through a little bit about us. So as you heard the comments, we basically are a consultancy, and we're really a precursor to a brand warehouse. So right now, we recently purchased Phono Publications, which is Josh Hopp's Freelite. We also bought Success Nutrients. We just did our final closing on Denver Consulting Group, so they're now part of our group and organization. We are a publicly traded company under the symbol NDCL. We have IP agreements with Medicine Man Production Company and Tree Frog Consulting. Tree Frog is our right-hand extractions support team that we generally work with, or other people in the industry. You engage your own folks, but there's folks we worked with at that base. The Freelite is really based upon a home grower's version of the book that can say, hey, you have 4 lights in your basement, you should be able to get 3 pounds of light out of your grows. So the book is about that thick. It's very, very specific. Week 1, week 2, week 3, nutrient regimen. It's a very thorough process as to how to get those kind of results. Oh, and we're not here selling today. Our clients are locked up, so we're done taking new clients. So I'm here today just to make sure I can answer your questions as best I can. And I'm not here to kind of hawk or put our wares out there. We're already working hard in Arkansas. So Success Nutrients is a 9-part nutrient. Years ago, when Josh first started getting the goals and growth goals he expected, he found that when they tested some of the other brands they were using, food coloring and inconsistencies with regard to formulations. So it may say it had this percentage of something, it may have 20%, not 100%, or it may have 120% instead of 100%. They found a lot of food coloring, a lot of additives that were there to make the liquid appear consistent, so when you poured it, you thought you were getting the same thing. But over time, he found his yields were off from harvest to harvest, even though he was very meticulous on how he grew. And they finally tied it back mostly to nutrients. So he and